Gul Perrin-Lowen, I think is the correct Cornish for Happy St Piran's Day, everyone, and welcome to the full council meeting of today, the 5th of March 2025. We're going to start with remarks from the Reverend Anderson. Please be upstanding.
So a couple of weeks ago, I went on some training for an alleged promotion that I have to become superintendent, which basically means more paperwork and responsibility and less time to do the good bits, but someone's got to do it. So I've done various personality profile type things in the past, in other jobs, and we did one that was new to me. It's called a strength deployment inventory. And what I really liked about it was that it gave you a list of strengths and preferences, as you would expect, but then instead of talking about weaknesses, it talked about overdone strengths. This isn't a church thing, this is a secular thing, because you would expect that sort of positivity from the church, but no, the real world does it as well. I like that that recognises that when we're not our best selves and perhaps we behave less well than we could, it comes from a place of starting with a good thing. So for example, we might be ambitious, which is good, but if we overdo it, it becomes ruthlessness. That was my lowest strength, which I was delighted about, but has somehow managed to still get promoted. We might be so caring about other people that we do anything they ask and become submissive, which isn't good for us. We could start out at persuasive, but it becomes abrasive when we're not actually listening to other people's concerns. We could start with the positive, principled strength, but become so rigid that we can't yield even on minor issues and become unbending. So I could go on, but my point is that I believe that every one of you starts from a point of being wonderfully and awesomely made. I see in each and every one of you the image of God. I see you as amazing, each and every one of you. You've come here to serve other people, and if some element of that positive starting point gets overdone and becomes an overdone strength, I believe that you can take it as a sign of strength, but maybe look at it with a fresh perspective. So let's look at each other through the lens of positive regard and remind ourselves and each other of all the strengths that we have, even if they are overdone.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you, Reverend Anderson. Please be seated. That was a good way to start our last full council meeting of this term. Really poignant words there from the Reverend Anderson, and we thank her for all of her contributions to this council, both as a councillor previously and now as the Mayor's chaplain. And I really appreciate you, Claire, so thank you very much. Okie doke. Oh, the computer's logged off. So here we go then. So item 1, apologies.
Good evening, members. I have apologies from Councillors Slade and Monk, and also late arrival for Councillor Gouge.
Thank you, Andy. If we can just note those that haven't apologised, please, and that aren't in attendance. Good evening, Councillor Fitter. Please join us. Pleasure to see you as always. Interests, we will take those as and when. Please let us know, the Chair know, if you have an interest as we approach an item. Minutes, so we've got the minutes from our last full council meeting on the 5th of February. I shall assume that we've all read them. So does anyone have any questions or any amendments that they feel are required? No, I'm happy to propose those. I have a seconder, Councillor Thompson. All in favour? Thank you. Any abstentions? One abstention. Councillor Wright. Objections? No. Thank you. Matters arising. Does anyone have any matters arising from the minutes of the 5th of February? No matters arising. Okay, moving. We don't have any matters arising, Andy. No updates. All the actions are up to speed. Good. So item 5 then, we've got community safety reports, and we have Inspector Johnson here with us. So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. So I think by now most people should be familiar with the crime figures that I'm producing for you. The first sheet within it gives you the crime numbers, the percentage rise and fall on the 12 months to date, and the following columns provide the last 28 days and then a percentage rise and fall again for you. The second one is a bar chart which shows this year's figures comparable to last year's figures, the yellow dots being last year. Hopefully you've all had time to review them. I'll just provide a bit of an overview for you, because within those figures, as you can see, there are a couple of large percentage increases. That comes with the usual health warning that on some of those, although the percentage is quite large, the numbers are actually quite small. So we might only be talking about an extra couple of crimes, which contributes quite heavily to the percentage figure. And I think that can be seen in the commercial burglary figures in relation to that. It shows an increase of 200%. Actually, that relates to 3 commercial burglaries. So it's not a large amount, but naturally it's still too many. We'd rather have none. But most of you will be familiar with what they are. So through either the news outlets or social media outlets. Earlier in the month we were subjected to a couple of commercial breaks. They were primarily on the outskirts of town. They were for cigarettes and alcohol off licences, garages, etc. And with regards to those, in the last couple of weeks we have had somebody through the custody system, and they seem to have stopped. So that's about as far as I'll go with that for the time being. Obviously we've got a process to follow, so hopefully that has put a stop to that with regards to commercial breaks. There are a couple of other large figures in there which you'll see. One of them is shoplifting. So this is as a result of a couple of people being in town. So we generally know who is responsible and when to expect a rise and fall in this crime type. And around the Christmas period, we were successful in obtaining convictions for quite a few people that were responsible for some of this type of crime. Unfortunately, we're now coming out the other end of that, so that conviction process has gone through the prison system, and some of them are now back out with us. So we're now starting to see the result of that. So naturally we start our process again, but that will take some time. So although there is an increase, we are on top of that and we are dealing with it. A couple of other things that may jump out to people on there. We've got a violence with injury at the top there, which shows a 92% increase in the last 28 days. And then if you look a little bit further down there, you've got some public order offences which also show a little bit of a rise. There is, and you will notice a bit of a pattern to the things that I'm kind of bringing to your attention with this. So a few months ago I mentioned domestic incidents and then a reporting of stalking and harassment off the back of it. It's a similar scenario here. National Criming Recording Standards mean that we have to crime things in a certain way, and that changes as we go through the years. So an example for this would be attending a public order incident in the street where 3 or 4 people have been assaulted. Previously we would have recorded a public order offence, still dealt with everything, but there would just been one crime. Now we're expected to crime the public order offence and the subsequent assaults, and it's the same vice versa. So that's contributing to those figures. So it does look like there's been quite a big rise there. I'm not overly concerned about it. I know why we've got that spike, but it's just to provide a little bit of context to you should anybody else within the room be concerned. So I think that is probably it with regards to the figures and explanations as far as I'm concerned. A couple of other bits for you is, a few months ago I mentioned street rangers. So we have moved on a little bit from that, and I know there are some people in the room that have contributed to that, so thank you. Like I said before, I do really think it's a good thing for the town. So it's nice to see that we have moved a little bit further on a couple of strands actually. So both with the local council and the county council for funding, but also looking back with the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. There is a potential that we could get some more funding in that way as well. So we could hit a double win really, which would be really good for the town. As I've said before, it's not just about that preventative measure, it's about that positive engagement and the impression that people leave the town with. So I'm hoping that we get some good news with regards to that in the next couple of weeks. And the other thing I just want to mention as well is, which I know will be a subject for many people over the coming weeks and months again, and that's Boardmasters. I know it's very early, but I do want to mention it because I want to provide some reassurance really. That Boardmasters does go on throughout the year for me. So November time, I was still dealing with debriefs, and that was looking at things that perhaps didn't go according to plan last year, and looking at how we can introduce it into the planning for this year. As I said, that ended in November. Planning for this year started for me in January. So I've already been to 3 Boardmasters meetings, and I know there are people in the room that have contributed to Boardmasters over the years, the same as I have. But it's just to provide you with that sort of reassurance and oversight really. We have started. There are different strands to those meetings. So I've been to safeguarding meetings, silver meetings, and blue light collaboration meetings. It is multifaceted. It does take up a lot of time, and there is an engagement process I know that you can go through if there's anything that you want to raise. If there's anything that you want to raise with me, of course you can do, and I can take that with me, but there is that engagement process for you as well. So if there's anything that you think of over the coming weeks or even months, please bring it to my attention and I can make sure that we get it passed back into the planning stage. All right, that's it from me. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody's got anything for me.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you for the update and the explanation, and it's slightly reassuring, I guess, to know that you understand, you have thoughts on why things have been happening, that sort of thing. You mentioned in the case of shoplifting, although it sounds as though perhaps these individuals are at risk of maybe other things, I don't know. I'm just presuming from the style of your speaking. And that they'd gone into prison and come back out again, and you see that as being a risk. The good news, I guess, in the past few months is a bit more conversation about rehabilitation. Mm-hmm. I mean, I see it as a failure that if we paid as taxpayers for someone to go to prison for however long, and they've come out and you believe, as someone well informed, that they're at high risk of causing a nuisance and risk potentially to others. I'm just curious, and maybe it's more just to put ideas out there, given that there's a new council coming for the next few years. If you have any thoughts on if there's anything the town might be able to do around rehabilitation of people at this sort of risk. What are we missing that could help? That, the prisons obviously can't, and that maybe they could in future, but for now they're not. Is there anything the town might be able to do to engage these sorts of individuals and lower that risk? Okay. Or things to support, charities or programs and things to support, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a difficult question, I suppose. And there's quite a lengthy answer, but in short, I suppose, they don't get released without any support, as I'm sure we all know, but there is a team within the police, the integrated offender management team. So when these people are released, they are expected to engage in that process. And quite often they're released under probation, so they get the probation support as well. They are offered quite a bit of support, and I suppose the thing you're talking about is diversion. So that can be quite difficult. There are again things in place. The type of items they're shoplifting are things that actually they don't need to, because there are things in place to support them for that, food banks and all of those kind of places, which we already provide. So it's not an easy fix. There are many things that we do and many ways we try to engage with them, but sometimes it just doesn't seem enough. Yeah, that's a difficult question. Right.
Thanks, Councillor Larson, for that very difficult question. Anyone else got any questions for Inspector Johnson? No? Thank you very much for your time, Inspector Johnson,
Right.
and really appreciate you coming as always. You are more than welcome to stay, but I'm sure that you're a very busy man and have other places that you probably need to be.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. Okie doke. So now item 6, open session for the electors of Newquay. Verbal and written questions. I know we've got a written question, which I'm going to step out of the room for in a moment, because it's my employer. It probably doesn't feel quite right that I stay for that one. But members of the public in the gallery, now would be your time. I understand we have it's Charlie, isn't it? Yeah. Do you want to step up to the mic, and if you press the green button, and the red light will come on, and then you've got 3 minutes to yeah.
Thank you for your time. My name's Charlie and I'm a science teacher here in Newquay and I have been for 16 years. I'm here... I think so, yeah. I'm here to talk to you about smartphones and the harms of smartphones in young people and what we can do about it. So there's a growing body of evidence at the moment showing the harms of smartphones. It's been growing over many years. And despite that growing body of evidence, there's huge societal pressure for parents to provide smartphones to their children younger and younger. And parents are really feeling this pressure and desperate, I think, for a community to come together to help and support them. When we think about it, actually, they're not phones that we're giving the children. We're giving them supercomputers in their pockets. They've got access to all of the most amazing things online, but they've also got access to the darkest parts of the internet, and that pulls many, many children into it. And you know, this is fueling a mental health crisis. Some people have questioned whether there's a correlation between mental health in young people and phone use, but there's so many studies showing it that correlation begins to have some very clear sort of causative links. Parents feel really trapped and they don't want this, but they don't know what to do. All parents seem to feel really isolated. People are coming up to me in the streets and saying, thank you so much for raising this. I thought I was on my own. I thought I was on... Everybody seems to think they're on their own. But actually, I think as a community, we can pull together. A recent survey said that 94% of primary parents believe smartphones to be harmful, because they are. So they're right. We know that, hopefully we all know that the teenage time, well, from 11 to 15 is a critical phase in brain development. I love a bit of neuroscience, so it makes me want to geek out on it, but essentially there's a load of neural pruning that's happening at this time and a load of rewiring and a lot going on in the prefrontal cortex, and it's absolutely the worst time for children to be given access to all of the harms of smartphones. Just a quick idea of what's going on. 90%, that's 90% of girls have seen unwanted explicit content. That's from an Ofsted review of what was going on here. They're not searching that. They're not Googling the wrong words. People are sending that to them on their phones, and that's on group chats. 51% of 11 and 13-year-olds have seen hardcore porn. That's not just a little bit of porn, that's horrible, hardcore, violent, degrading to women porn, and then they think that that's normal. Again, that's 51%, that's anyone's child really, isn't it? There's a 50-50 chance. What happens here is that kids get into a big group chat with their whole year group. Somebody in that group chat sees something that they really don't like. That poor child deals with that by sharing that to the whole of the group, not because they're an awful, evil child, but because that poor child's been exposed to that and they're trying to normalize it. And then suddenly the whole year group's seen that and it just can't be unseen. Parental controls don't stop that. If they're on a group chat, that comes in via WhatsApp, that comes in via Snapchat, and there's no way that, that they can unsee that. We've then got 84% of bullying now going on online. The online bullying is vile. It's far worse than face-to-face bullying. The things that children will say and do online are a lot worse than things they would say to somebody's face. And that bullying then follows that child home, into their house, into their safe space, into their bedroom, into their bed at night time. And children are very secretive about it. They don't tell their parents they're being bullied because they don't want to lose their phones, because then they're worried that they're going to miss out more. So we see a rise in self-harm and we see a rise in suicide. And there's lots to go on with. 12-year-olds spend an average of 29 hours a week on their phone. That's an average in the UK. Teens, 35 hours a week. So that's a huge amount of missed opportunity for most of us love living here because we have this fantasy of our children running around outside and enjoying all these amazing wild spaces that we have and all these sports. And actually, these children are really struggling to engage sometimes in these sports because of the draw of the phones. I've got a little quote from Dr. Susie Davies. She's a GP in Bristol. She's quoting NHS data when she says, there's been 70% less outdoor accidents in the last 10 years. Yay, 70% less outdoor accidents, but 93% more incidents of self-harm. And then she then says, I promise you, it's much easier to mend a broken arm than a broken mind. So we could go on. There's so many shocking statistics. The case studies are really sickening because you look at the child in that case study and you think that could so easily be my child, my neighbour. There's no need for me to go on because actually what I found is that anyone I speak to about this already knows it. We know it. We know it for ourselves. We know it to some degree. We might not have been aware that 90% of girls are getting sent explicit images, but we know it to some degree. So what now? Parents, head teachers, children, everybody's feeling isolated. The answer is so obvious. We come together. We come together. This is a matter that needs collective action, and some towns and some boroughs in the UK have done it amazingly already. Some whole countries have done it. We can't really wait for our government. They are looking at the Safer Phones Bill on Friday. They're then going to take a year before they decide what they're doing with that in terms of raising the internet age of consent, and the Safer Phones Bill doesn't really do everything we need it to do yet. My ambition and what I would love to see is for all Newquay schools to be smartphone free by September 2025. Every head teacher I've spoken to about that looked so happy and relieved when I suggested it. Every teacher I've mentioned it to, every parent, people are coming up to me in the streets and stopping me saying, I've heard about what you're doing. Thank you so much. I thought I was the only parent. I thought I was the only one. And it's just, it's not the case. Nobody's on their own with this. We just need to pull together. I think by making schools smartphone free, we then send a really clear message to the community that actually smartphones, not ordinary phones, nobody has any issue. There's no research to say there's a problem with a basic phone, that phones and texts, it's the smartphones. But I think we send a message to the community to say that smartphones are incompatible with child safety. They are simply incompatible with child safety. And absolutely incompatible with education and learning spaces. So I say let's join the towns, boroughs, countries who are leading the way in this. Let's make Newquay the first smartphone-free schools town in the West Country. I'm just asking if you will support this movement.
Thank you, Charlie, and it's a really, really poignant discussion, isn't it? And I mean, I've got 3 children, and one of my oldest is just about to start secondary, and I'm under huge amounts of pressure from him to supply him with a phone. And we actually had that conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll get you a phone. And he said, I said, it'll ring and you can maybe send a text message. No, I want the apps. No. No, you can have a phone, but you're not having a smartphone. And I'm sure there'll be lots of commentary. Obviously, you are aware that Cornwall Council is the local authority in terms of education in Cornwall, though clearly as the Town Council, we represent the voices of our community, and I'm sure that there will be questions from the floor. I do think that we can probably sit this as a proper discussion at C&T, but happy to have a very brief, quick chat about it now, and then maybe someone will want to recommend that goes to C&T. Councillor Saray first, then Councillor Tao.
Charlie, thank you. I guess probably I've been at Town Council now for nearly 2 years. Hearing you speak in Chamber today is probably the most powerful moment I've experienced in Chamber since becoming a Town Councillor. I want to primarily thank you on a number of bases. Firstly, for engaging in the democratic process. We have very few questions from the gallery, and the fact that you've come as a teacher as well this evening to share this with us. I think I speak on behalf of the Chamber. We just really, really appreciate and thank you for even engaging and sharing this with you. You certainly have my wholehearted support as a Town Councillor, though I'll be shortly stepping down, but as a citizen of Newquay, I'd certainly love to support you in your endeavours. I also agree that the problem is, whilst global, and we're up against global multi-trillion dollar industry that's fighting for all of our attention and focus, the solution in part is local. And again, I'd like to thank you and to recognise that it is not the job of schools to pick up the social ills of that. I'm a parent. I'm responsible for my children. You're not responsible for my children. But schools are at on the firing line, and just to recognise that, and actually, if there is enough support from the community for those in education who would like to lead on it, then maybe we can make a difference in the window of schools, and at least carve back a little bit of time for young people who are, whether they know it or not, are desperately in need of space, mental space, and protection. So yeah, all in all, obviously very little that we can talk about in detail to move forward, but you certainly have my support, and I would be unsurprised to hear that if you won't have the support of the rest of the chamber as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Councillor Tao.
Hi, Charlie.
Hello.
It's been a long time since I set foot in a school. So I don't actually know the status quo. What do things look like at the moment? Are smartphones allowed in lessons, or what's the setup?
So the government has said that they want all schools to be on their own and make their own decisions. They say they're giving head teachers autonomy, but really they're just isolating head teachers. The lowest level that you can choose is to have phones never seen, never heard, never used. So the rule in most schools is that your phone is switched off and in your bag. That causes a huge number of problems. They inevitably sneak into pockets. They inevitably buzz against thighs, and it's distraction. I think the average child gets 237 notifications a day. Yeah, that's something like 1 every 3 minutes when you're awake. And it makes the same part of your brain activated as if someone's calling your name. So somebody constantly going, Charlie, every time you're trying to learn and what Charlie, you know, and so the phones are in pockets. They shouldn't be in pockets. They absolutely shouldn't, but it is an impossible situation to police and ensure that there's no phones in pockets. We then have children who go to the toilet at break time, or say they're desperate for the toilet in a lesson time, and they will happily sit in the toilet for their whole break time because that's going to be where they can use their phone. So if you asked any teacher, they will tell you that phones are not allowed in school, and they're not, absolutely, that we're not encouraging their use. But it's impossible to police without a much higher level of locking them away, or just asking all parents not to send their children into school with smartphones at all, which is the dream.
Thank you, Charlie. Anyone else got any questions for Charlie? Councillor Kenny.
Yes, I thought it was very interesting. I don't have children myself. What do you want this council to do? I mean, you've come here and you've said that, and I'm sure, but what can we as a council do?
Because I think it's an issue for collective action, I'm just asking for support so that we can, the schools all want support. The schools they don't want to be the only person to do this. Parents all want support. They don't want to be the only person to do this. So just the support. Yes, as a community, we see this as a good thing.
So, I mean, are you suggesting that we write a letter to the schools saying we wish to encourage you to follow the no smartphones in your schools? Is that the sort of thing you put in mind?
I don't even know if they'd need any encouragement, to be honest. They're all really keen, but just to know that they had your support, even just we've discussed this, and as a community, or you know, as a council, we're in full support of this, I would imagine.
Councillor, sorry?
Maybe just to bridge that, I myself don't understand the full workings of the council, and I've been here 2 years, so I suspect partly what you're doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is sharing your heart and the wider vision, and maybe it's up to us to work out what we can do and how we can support. We're within both as individual councillors and also at committee level, but I know that your desire to engage, because I've been somebody who wants to engage, just to know that your local representatives at a town council level know about it is probably enough to start off with, but I'm sure we can find ways of supporting beyond obviously letters and things.
Yeah, thank you. Before I come to Councillor Williamson, I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Kenny. I think what we can do is, I think there's a couple of things we can do. We can certainly write to the schools and offer them our support on behalf of the community, I think, in the endeavour to remove mobile smartphones from schools. We can also be a central convening point for those schools should they wish to have a small summit around this issue and have local representation in the room as well. I think this is best taken to C&T as an item to be properly discussed on that committee, under that committee's remit. And I know I've spoken to the chair, and I know the chair's quite happy with that, of C&T. But for the moment, I'd be happy to propose that we write on behalf of the town council to all of the heads of all of the primary and secondary schools in Newquay, showing our support for this campaign, and offering up the next C&T meeting as an opportunity to come and make representations on that by the schools and any other support that they feel they might need. Councillor Williamson.
I was going to say more or less what you just said there.
Might want to second it then.
Well, that's quite handy, yes. And thank you very much, Charlie, for sharing your evening with us. And I will have a look at all the links and everything. That's great. I think also the as a parent of pre-teens who are both exceptionally desperate for their own phones, God knows what they're going to do. I don't want to think about it, but giving parents the confidence to actually say no to them as well when they have so many other things as well, and that they're not the only ones in their class as well. Yeah. And I think I speak to the parents of my children's class groups, and we want to try to empower each other to say no to buying or giving our old smartphone to our kid just because we can, whether it's got a Vodafone chip in it or it's just on the Wi-Fi. So I think schools have a really important role to play in saying no, but actually we're talking about a smartphone-free childhood. So even if it's a case of they have no phone at school but they go home and they are just constantly on their phone, that doesn't help with their mental health and things either. So I think it is bringing that community together and giving people the strength to say no to our little cherubs.
Thank you, Councillor. And were you happy to second that motion?
I am delighted to second.
Very good. Councillor Morris, did you want to come in? Last one.
Just a couple of things. First of all, is there another C&T meeting before? Yes, 2 weeks time. Right. The second thing is my children actually do have a smartphone. Well, the eldest one does, but she's not allowed to take it to school because we've literally put our foot down and we will not allow her to take it. Simple as.
I commend you for your efforts on your childcare. I mean, yeah, if you could help me with mine, that'd be great. Right, so that's proposed and seconded. All in favour? Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Thank you, Charlie. And I know how scary it can be to come and face this.
I'd much rather speak to 100 teenagers.
Yeah. We genuinely really appreciate you coming in. Thank you ever so much, and we'll be in touch. Could you leave your email address with Laura, please? And then we can make sure that we get in touch around the letter and then around C&T. Yeah, perfect. Okie doke. I'm going to now step out of the room because my employer has written a question to the Town Council and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to stay. So I'm going to hand over to Deputy Mayor, Councillor North.
Good evening, everybody. As you can see in your pack, we've had a letter written to us by one of our tenants of the Mount Wise building, Mr. Nick Kay, and he has written, as a Newquay resident and a tenant at 28 Mount Wise, having had incorrect statements being made in public about his employees and the tenancy, how does Councillor Gardner's comments fit into the Nolan principles, and should I be looking to move my business to a different site? So obviously the clerk has had a look at this and I know he's got a response, so I'll...
Yes, so I have drafted a proposed response, which is obviously open to members tonight to make any amendments or changes, but I thought it was quite helpful, hopefully, to draft that for members. I can read it out loud if members wish me to, but it is on iPads for everyone to see. Okay, would you like me to just read it out? So it says, Dear Nick, thank you for getting in touch and raising your concerns. We appreciate the contribution your business makes to 28 Mount Wise and the wider community. We value you as a tenant As a commercial tenant, your presence supports the sustainability of this important building, and we recognise the role you and your employees play in Newquay's business landscape. Whilst the Town Council cannot comment on statements made by individual councillors, we remain committed to upholding the highest standards of integrity, transparency and fairness in accordance with the Nolan Principles of Public Life. These principles guide the conduct of those in public office and underpin the ethical framework within which the Council operates. The Council acknowledges that public comments made by individual councillors without formal input or approval from the Council represent their own personal views. Such statements do not speak for or reflect the position of the Town Council. We understand that this can sometimes be frustrating, and we assure you that the Council remains impartial, professional and committed to supporting all tenants fairly. If you have any concerns about statements made by a councillor, you may submit a Code of Conduct complaint, which is overseen by Cornwall Council's monitoring officer. This process ensures that concerns are assessed fairly, independently and in accordance with the standards expected of those in public life. More information about how to submit a Code of Conduct complaint can be found via Cornwall Council's website. Your tenancy at 28 Mount Wise is valued, and we would be happy to discuss any concerns you have regarding your business location. If you would like to arrange a meeting, please do let us know.
Any questions or comments? Or, Councillor Larson.
I just say that I think the clerk feels drafted an appropriate statement, and I support that. Thank you.
Yes, just to echo Kate's comments there, I think it's a very well, almost Canadian-esque drafted letter. Bravo. And yeah, I think we all agreed when we signed up to be councillors that we would, you know, meet certain levels of behaviour and standards and not resort to any sort of bullying tactics and stuff. So I think it's good to kind of have this discussion in the open air. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I'd echo what's been said really about it being, I think, a very well-written piece. I wonder whether, just for point of clarity, that I'm trying to get inside, again, as a relative newcomer to the Town Council, how it's received. I wonder whether some clarity in the third paragraph around the difference between officers and members and the day-to-day running and the strategic direction setting might be helpful, because in the same breath, the council says it can't comment on Town Council comments, and I think that it might help for clarity if that kind of hamstrung position is just given a little bit more flesh on the bones, maybe.
Got a seconder. Are you the seconder, Councillor Saray? Thank you. All in favour of the letter going? Any objections or abstentions? No. Okay.
And we're back. Okie doke. So, item 7 then, correspondence. We have a letter from Redruth Town Council on the second home council tax. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read it. And essentially, it seems Redruth aren't particularly happy with how the second home council tax has been divvied up. Obviously, places like Newquay, where we've got 600, would you believe, 600 second homes, obviously received almost £200,000, I think, in second council tax, and Redruth presumably has significantly less second homes, therefore didn't receive anywhere near as much money as somewhere like Newquay or St Ives or Padstow, and they're not happy about that. And it seems they're looking to for a different formula on how to redistribute that those funds more fairly. The clerk has thankfully drafted a response which I think is balanced and reasonable, and ultimately highlights the fact that whilst we obviously feel for Redruth and the challenging financial situation all town and parish councils find themselves in, Newquay is significantly more impacted by tourism than Redruth, and so it is in a way right, more than in a way, it is right that we therefore receive more of that second council tax than Redruth. Anyone have any thoughts, questions, concerns? Councillor Saray.
I just thought it was very gracious of the clerk not to indicate that Redruth couldn't possibly have very many second homes. So very, very diplomatic, I thought. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Kenny, then Councillor Williams.
It's unlikely that this council would agree that we should give more money to Redruth and take it away from us. But what you're not saying is what Newquay Town Council is actually spending that money on. And I think it is fair to say that if we could give some indication, I mean, we're obviously not ring fencing it for housing, but effectively, what is it we're spending it on, say, the library or something like that, something that reflects why we think that it's quite fair for Newquay to get more money.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, you know, that we have allocated it into earmarked reserves for next year on the basis that in other parts of the country where they've had this and they've used it as part of their ongoing revenue spend, they've then seen a massive drop-off in year 2 where people find ways around, loopholes around this, and then end up with a sort of very large seesaw effect in terms of the financial hole in the second year. So we felt it was prudent to put it into earmarked reserves, and you know that will be things like refurbishing toilets, which are broadly, you know, let's be honest, mostly used by tourists and cost the taxpayer in Newquay, you know, almost £500,000 this year. And so yeah, so we can sort of embellish that and sort of give that a flourish.
When you started off saying, well, it's got into reserves, but if you're saying
no,
actually spending it on things
absolutely
directly associated with tourism.
Absolutely, that's what earmarked reserves are for, aren't they? You know, to do things like
not necessarily.
To do things like the refurbishment of benches, refurbishment of toilets, etc., etc. Councillor Williamson, I believe you were next.
Yes, and I think their level of frustration possibly is from a feeling that they are generally underserved, and so the tone, I think, instead of saying you don't have any second homeowners, I think could be, you know, but we would want to, because what's good for Redruth is good for Newquay, because it's good for Cornwall, and so it's good for all of us. So, you know, and Redruth and a couple of other areas of Cornwall are massively under supported by, you know, Cornwall Council and national governments over decades. So I think, you know, I think we can appreciate where there maybe we're hoping that they might get some additional funding, and that hasn't materialised. So, you know, I'd say Redruth possibly does need it a lot. You know, I don't know the area well, but yeah, I think let's just make sure that it's a careful tone.
No, quite right, absolutely, and I think we should recognise that any second home council tax, the town and parish councils will only receive somewhere in the region of about 9 or 10% of the total sum. Cornwall Council will receive the very much the lion's share of that, and we would hope that they would absolutely put that towards housing in Redruth and in Newquay indeed. Councillor Hannan and Councillor Larson, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps some reference in the response might just reflect the fact that if you look at Newquay's population in the quiet months of winter compared to the massive influx of visitors that we have and the massive increase in population, putting that pressure on our services. I mean, that's what this is designed for, to basically make up for the extra use of all of our facilities and our services, because we are a tourist town and because we have all these second homes. And I like the response from the clerk. I think if you want any more justification, by all means, try and put what we spend some of it on, and perhaps point out that it's because we have this massive influx of people in the summer that we have to cater for, and we need the money to do it.
Tony, it's CCTV.
Well, thank you to Redruth Council for raising this. My immediate reaction is in support of their request, but obviously the points being made are valid. I think that the timing is unfortunate. We've had to be prudent and careful with hours and hours of budget work with my fellow councillors sat beside me over the past 6 months, knowing that this was coming. And if we'd received this letter from Redruth Council 6 months ago, maybe we could have considered it differently. We have had to very carefully balance, as all councils do right now. So I actually I've spent quite a bit of time in Redruth and Camborne in the past 6 months or so, and my immediate reaction is, of course, there's significantly more funding needed and support for those communities. I think the Mayor raises a good point that the lion's share of the money doesn't go to the town councils, it goes to Cornwall Council. And I would perhaps hope that we could strengthen the wording in this letter around that and around our hope that they will, as pointed out, invest in Redruth, and I think we could say the same for Camborne here. And we share the concerns that those communities ultimately should benefit from. I'm really glad to see the second home council tax come in, because if someone can afford to own 2 homes, that's a lot more than the many of us who can't get even a first home yet. But absolutely, we need to see that the council, the Cornwall Council, will invest more in Redruth and Camborne, and I hope the letter could reflect that a bit more, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tao.
Thank you. Those who supported this tax views it as compensation to the communities of where holiday homes are and their effect on that area. So if there are no or little holiday homes or no holiday homes in a certain area, I don't understand why they should get a significant share of those funds. So I am quite content with what the clerk has prepared, and I'm happy to support it.
Thanks, Councillor Tao. I suppose if I was in Redruth's shoes and knowing many people locally as I do, what I would suggest is that second homes in Newquay have obviously caused house prices in Newquay to go up, the reduction of open market rental properties to go down, and that's meant that the people that work in our shops, in our restaurants, in our cafes are being pushed further and further out. And I suspect there are many people that work in Newquay that live in Redruth, and I suppose that's where they would say that impact is. And I think you're right, it probably is seen as a compensation, although one might argue that it's probably not quite enough compensation at this stage. So always more to do. Councillor Larson, did you want to come back before we move on?
Was to reiterate that point, I mean, you're saying supposedly might have caused, I mean, I've seen comments from people saying that they were pushed out of this town in the past 4 or 5 years in particular. And we know that people have been moved to Redruth, Camborne, other parts of Cornwall, and away from schools where their children had been at for many years, from their community, from their family, and with little support provided. So I have huge empathy for that, and these are residents of Newquay, and yet we walk down the streets here and they're empty homes. Pentire is dark all through winter, other than sort of half the homes or houses. So just on that point, I think it really is a related issue. It's an all of Cornwall issue rather than just about the towns with the second homes.
Thank you, Councillor Larson. So I'm happy to, I mean, the clerk's made some notes. You're happy to make a few tweaks. Other than that, I mean, with your tweaks, I'm happy to support the letter that you've written with a couple of tweaks that you've already listed. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Saray, all in favour? Thank you very much. Okie doke. So we're moving on then. Item 8, Mayor's announcements. I'll just say a couple of things. Firstly, I was at the St Piran's Day Parade today. Jolly good affair, biggest we've ever seen, so Len was telling me. And it was wonderful to see so many school children, and I met with many of the schools and school children, and it was great to see the efforts they'd gone to. I have to say, particularly Nuki Junior, who'd made this huge chuff and tin mine. It was spectacular, it honestly was. I think I put a picture on my social media if anyone's interested. Have a look. It was brilliant. So well done to all the organisers, well done to the volunteer road manning people in the Lions. Thank you, Councillor Hannan. I saw you there briefly. And most of all, thank you to to all the schools that that got their children involved and brought the families out. So brilliant day today in the sunshine. Absolutely wonderful. Well done, everyone. So I just wanted to read a very short statement, given it is our last full council, and it's come around really quickly. So I just want to say, serving as your mayor this year has been one of the greatest honours of my life. Nuki is a town full of heart, resilience and community spirit, and one my family has chosen to call home. Being able to represent you as mayor has been a privilege, and I'll always cherish it. I want to thank particularly Councillor North, who has been an exceptional support over not just this year as Deputy Mayor, but the previous year as Mayor. I think we work really well together, probably because we leave our egos at the door. I'm really pleased we've achieved much together, but what's meant the most to me is the chance to connect with so many of our community, to hear your stories and to work alongside you, my fellow councillors, to make our town even better. We may not have always agreed, but for the most part, the discourse was civil and constructive. Thank you for trusting me with this role. It's been an incredible journey, and I'm excited to continue to serve our community and hope to continue to serve our community after May the 1st. So thank you all very much for this year. Thank you.
Very well said.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Totally respect what you just said, which is fantastic, but I'm a bit startled that this is the last one.
We thought people might say that.
Because why aren't we having one on whatever it is, April thing? What's the mechanism for the next year's mayor and deputy mayor? Because it's normally in the last. So it's not on the agenda that I haven't seen.
Andy has taken me through it, but I'll let you pick this one up.
So obviously, because it's an election year, it's a bit different. So once the elections are over and we know who the councillors are, you'll all be summoned to the annual council meeting, which is on, I think, the 12th or 14th. It's the Wednesday of May. The first item of the agenda will be the election of mayor. And then later on in the agenda, there'll be deputy mayor. But I think members that have been here before will know there is then a gap between when committees can be formed, because obviously there's new members, they will not know what committees do what. So there is a period of time, so do not expect committees to happen straight away. There will be some powers given to certain members around the planning process and some other interim arrangements which we've done before, so we have templates on that. But committees may not resume until July. So it can be a timely period of time, and that depends how quickly selection can meet, that members understand what each committee does and where they want to sit and how that works out. So I just flag that now, because I'm sure that will come up again.
Thank you, Andy. Does that answer your question, Councillor Andy?
Yes, it's usually nerve-wracking to select the mayor on election year and think, oh, please let them get elected.
Very good. Councillor Morris.
Can we also make sure there is not one in August this year, because anyone that's in tourism won't be able to attend like last year?
But presumably that's one of the first things at the very first meeting, is to set the agenda for the year. So should you be on the council at that point, then I'm sure you'll raise that at that point. Brilliant, super. Okay, so moving on then to item 9, financial statements. So these have already all gone out and been signed off. This is just for noting. Does anyone have any queries on these? No, I'm happy to propose. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thompson, all in favour? Thank you very much. That's unanimous, Laura. And now we have item 10, open session to Cornwall councillors' verbal, written or tabled reports. I see 2 Cornwall councillors in our midst. Councillor Tow, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the last council meeting, there was some discussion about the situation regarding dogs on beaches, and some reports that dogs are falling ill. Since then, there have been other reports coming in from around the county of a similar situation. However, Cornwall Council is still at a loss of what is exactly happening. But it is still ongoing, and I hope the answers will be coming soon. So the only other business I would like to bring up is the underpass. Sorry, underpass at the zoo, which is in quite a shocking state at the moment. I am in contact with officers at Cornwall Council to try and get some action down there and get the situation seen to, so there is an ongoing regime of sorting that area out and not just forgetting about it. So that's all I have to report for this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Tow. Councillor Fitter. Always a pleasure, John. Please approach the mic.
I will be brief, sir. Just to say that I'm attempting to get confirmation still from Cornwall Council on the status of the Watergate Bay car park. I know you have your own car parks to where in town, and Watergate Bay is another of your car parks out of town. But and I'm asking for assurances that the car parking arrangements as applicable at this moment in time shall continue, i.e. that they are free to local people and visitors in the winter months out of the season. I had a conversation with Councillor Rushworth, who has the Porthcurno area, and he has said to me that he has actually had a confirmation that the Porthcurno car park will remain no charge in the winter months. That was his reason, in actual fact, for supporting the budget that came to full council last week or the week before. I forget when it was, Councillor Tow, you remember, you were there, sir. I'm asking for the same thing. Unfortunately, the cabinet members, and it seems that there's possibly 4 of them who have some sort of input into this, are all running scared of the decision, possibly because it's rather unpopular. So they're sort of saying, well, nothing to do with me, it's Councillor so-and-so, you know. And it's a bit of shock and awe. But I'm now having a meeting arranged by Phil Mason with somebody from Corserve who is going to go through my concerns. So I'm hoping that we will get some assurance, or not, as the case may be. And I had a meeting with residents at St Cullen Minor this evening, and one resident asked me to pass on to you, Mr Mayor, and the Town Clerk, his absolute congratulations for all the work that's being done and is being done at the Woods, Priory Woods. He is most impressed. This is an elderly gentleman, he walks there regularly, and he said that the team, the council team, are absolutely brilliant, tidied it up, and he is exceptionally pleased with what he's seen. and I said I'd pass on those things, those comments to you. And it just leaves me, Mr. Mayor, to congratulate you, sir, on your term of office, and to thank you on behalf of the residents of St Cullen Minor and Whipsodary and Watergate and Tregurrian for the interest and the way you've looked after their interest in your year in office, and your particular courtesy and kindness to me. And I offer congratulations to your successor on taking over the chair, and I believe that is the procedure, or may have misspoken. It may not be the procedure. I may not have been listening just now, but whatever anyway. But thank you, Mr. Mayor. You are a star, and I shall personally thank you very much indeed for your kindness.
That's too kind of you, John. Thank you ever so much, and it's been a genuine pleasure working with you, John. And thank you. Before I go to questions, did you want to
just answer?
Yeah, please.
Just to say, if you go back to the residents at St Cullen Minor, can you tell them that Councillor Sarah Thompson was the instigator of the work at Priory Woods? She should get all the praise.
Absolutely.
I know we work as a councillor, but she was the one that pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. And people, you know, she is somebody who hides under that little mantle, but she is such an asset to this town council.
Thank you.
I was only mentioning Councillor Towell in another part of the conversation today at St Cullen Minor, and her eagerness to try and get the link of the footpath at the bottom completed down to the Priory Bridge and then up through the woods. They were exceptionally ecstatic. They live down there, and they said that would be absolutely marvellous. They're aware of that path that's now been overgrown, and I said that you were trying at your very level best to get it done, and so your name has been mentioned, madam, I can assure you. Thank you.
Thanks, John, and thanks for your hard work. Before I come to Councillor Kenny, because I know she's waving at me, please pass on, we will pass on those kind words to our environment team as well, who, as you quite rightly say, are doing a cracking job with Newquay University, I think, isn't it? So yeah, and thank you for that. My question on the car parks, as truth seems to be something that is fluid at the moment in the world of politics in Cornwall, have you got any idea, or have you seen the agreement for handing over of these car parks, and what the, you know, whether there's a minimum term on it, whether there are any break clauses on it? There are a number of reasons why I think that would be of interest. And also, just while we're talking about car parks, I understand that there's a consultation out asking about a car park at the end of Pentyre and whether it should go to the Cornwall Heritage Trust, despite the fact that we've got a Cornwall councillor out in the news telling everyone that it's already happened and it's been a done deal. I don't know whether the communications team at Cornwall Council and that particular cabinet member have not quite aligned on their approach.
As Councillor Towell will agree with me, of course, the answer is no. We see no information or documents relating to the proposed transfer. It's all been done by officers and cabinet members, and of course it is a cabinet decision. It's a delegated cabinet decision, so they can make the decisions, and they have to go through the method of consultation. But as we all know, of course, consultation can mean many things. And in this particular case, as in the previous occasions with Cornwall Council's consultation, they ask a question, listen, and then go away and make their own decisions. So I've not seen any paperwork. I'm hoping I'm meeting the MD of Corserve when Phil Mason has arranged a meeting, and I might have further information. But of course, the problem then is that if it is privileged information, bound by confidentiality, then of course I'm not able to say it. I'd rather not be told things in confidence if they're in the public interest, because it just makes the whole thing a nonsense. But I haven't seen it. I presume Corserve have already sort of done a template of what they want to do, and there is some suggestion it's going to a company in Birmingham, I believe, you know. So other than that, but it's all rumours as far as backbench councillors.
Yes, indeed, yeah, that seems to be the case. Thank you, Councillor Vitter. Councillor Kenny and then Councillor Towell.
Carry on the saga of car parks. I have read what has been signed off and with the best will in the world, John, I think you're being very optimistic that they're going to promise you anything about car parks. My understanding is that there is a movement in Cornwall Council to call this decision in, because it was signed off by Phil Mason, subject to call-in, i.e. is anybody going to call it in? One of the conditions they had, I understand, was they were going to consult with the parishes concerned. Have they consulted with this? No, they haven't. And I think that might be the basis for them actually calling this decision in, which case it will go into purdah and it will not happen. But the actual, what they are planning to do is a 5-year contract with a break clause in 2 years. And if they break it in 2 years, then if anybody has spent any money getting the cameras, all the rest of it, Cornwall Council will have to reimburse them. But I'm hoping they will call it in, because I think it is an absolutely appalling decision. I think any promises that Corserve make to you will not be worth the paper they're not written on, because it's, they're going to go outsourced to a private company, and that private company, there isn't even a guarantee that they will not develop on this land. There's nothing on it. They were saying it's not, the paper that supports the Cabinet paper said these car parks are not essential to the car parking network. Well, they are essential to our car parking network. So, I mean, I understand what you're trying to do on Watergate, and I'm sure they'll tell you lots of lovely things. But I think the decision should be called in. So if you'd like to talk to one or two of the Lib Dem colleagues in Cornwall Council and see if you can join with your independence to getting this decision called in, on the basis they haven't consulted with us.
Yeah. Councillor Julian Germans has been emailing independent members about this matter of the call-in, and of course if it is subjected to a call-in, then in actual fact it would actually be dead until after the next Cornwall Council elections, because we enter purdah, and so the decisions cannot be made. Relating to Watergate Bay, you, Councillor Kenny, would know, and I think probably other members would know, the history of that car park is that in 2007/8, before the amalgamation of the Unitary Authority, Restormel Borough Council were actively seeking, and the Newquay members who were on Restormel, seeking, and it was an agreement that the Watergate Bay car park would actually come into the ownership of Newquay. And that was on the plate, and it was all, but unfortunately it was all stopped when the new Unitary Authority was being formed. No local authority could actually transfer any of their assets over to a town or parishes. It was to stop them presumably taking away any jewels they had and giving them to town and parishes. So that was a promise, and I've reminded people in letters to when I've submitted objection that there was this commitment. And so if Cornwall Council are now devolving that to Corserve, who in turn would devolve to somebody else, then in actual fact, logically, it should come to Newquay Town Council, because in actual fact, that was the commitment given at the very beginning. So, and as for the promise, well, Councillor Rushworth told me this, and I find it rather ironical, really, that Councillor Rushworth chooses to indicate to me the reason why he had that assurances, so he was able to support their budget. So, unfortunately, he can't take his vote back now, but I will have great fun in saying to him, because, of course, I say this to you, Councillor Kenny, if it is true that Porthcurno, he's got a written confirmation, then it's only right that Newquay should have the same written confirmation for Watergate. So, whilst I share your doubt that what he was telling me was actually factually correct, if it was correct, then I think, quite frankly, we'll have the same undertaking given for Watergate Bay.
Can I just add,
yeah, please, Councillor.
And also Dane Road, yes. And also Belmont. And what's the third one that's going? The fourth one that's going? Dane.
Albany.
Oh no, Albany isn't going. They've changed their mind on that one. So it's Dane, Belmont, Watergate, and there's another one, I've forgotten which one it is. And as you say, the Cornwall Council has been talking for months about transferring. It's Tregonwell, yeah, of course it is. It's what's left of Tregonwell is also supposed to be going. So, I mean, there is no difference between Watergate and what's left of Tregonwell. So, I don't want to argue with you, John, because I'm wishing you the best of luck on this.
Say that Watergate to Newquay is a very special place because it's your out-of-town beach. It's a Newquay out-of-town beach as such. It's got a large car park, it's a big surfing area, and it really is quite important. I think it's probably one of your beach-wise jewels in the crown.
Indeed. What I don't know whether we're allowed to. Might we implore you to call that one in then, Councillor Fitter and Councillor Tao, as our representatives of our community here in Newquay and a community that is reliant on those car parks. And I know that I've been talking to the residents of Tolkien Road who rely on that car park for just to be able to park anywhere near their home. And I was chatting to a nurse who works shifts and gets back late at night and can't find spaces, and they've been asked by Cornwall Council, they put that car park behind Newquay Junior. And when I called on Councillor Gardner and the officer at Cornwall Council to do that, it was on the basis of residents' parking permits that on Ennis Road were costing £50 a year, and they're charging £600 a parking space down on Tolkien Road. It is absolutely appalling, absolutely appalling. So, might we implore you? Anyway, Councillor Tao, you wanted to speak, sorry.
No, that's okay. The point has been made, so I'm fine.
Thank you. Sorry, we went on a bit there, but we appreciate your time as always, John, and hope to see you on the other side. Okie doke. So we are moving on to item 11, committee minutes and reports. And I shall hand over to the chair of ENF for the minutes there. Councillor Larson.
Hi. I have the pleasure of presenting the minutes for the Environmental Facilities Committee meeting held on the 11th of February. And thank you to those who attended and the staff who have developed this. And I'd just say before we pass them, I apologise that I've noted there are a few tiny edits we need to make. So should I read them out first and then we propose?
Those are at committee level, so we'll pick those up at committee level.
We'll pick that up at committee level. My apologies. Okay. So I ask that we please I propose that we pass these minutes, and would anybody like to second that, please? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Hannan, all in favour? Sorry. Yes.
Please.
I was conscious through the minutes that during my term of absence, I was listed as no apologies received, but that should be a blanket status for apologies. So I just wanted to put that on the record that I did apologise because I had a term of leave.
Our apologies for that, because that was clearly known, and I was on the impression that was in the minutes.
Yes, yeah. I actually thought, and this one has you as present, these minutes, and my recollection of the meetings before that was that you were actually noted as apologies. We'll so, Councillor Tell, apologies if that's sounding confusing, but this one actually has you as present. That's the one we're passing, and if there were any past minutes, but in those meetings we were quite conscious that obviously you were unable to make direct apologies, and therefore it was made for you with that full understanding. We'd all want that if any of us were in that situation. So, yeah, no, full understanding there. Thank you. So I propose that we pass. Councillor Hannan has seconded. All in favour of passing the minutes? Thank you very much. They have passed.
Thank you. And you've got some recommendations there, Councillor Larson. Library.
Recommendations isn't there.
Let me start with the first one then, and then we'll come to that. Thank you. So the first recommendation, A, is for the library roof tender, and this was after considerable committee discussion of which way this should be done that's most economic, and we're recommending to full council release of up to £2,500 for the council property from the council property EMR to proceed with what was option 2 in our minutes and appoint Coxon Consultancy to undertake a full structural survey of the library flat roof. And so I'd like to propose that. May I have a seconder? Thank you to Councillor Hannan. And all in favour of that? Thank you. Very excited to finally get that going. Thank you. And you were picking up there, Councillor Kenny. I think we only have one here today for environment.
Yeah, I think that's it, Kate.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is the 11th of February. There's a recommendation about releasing some money in it. Just under.
Oh, it was the retrospective from Mount Wise.
Oh, the retrospectives.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on then to the minutes of planning and licensing, so I'll pass you on to Councillor Kenny.
Sorry, am I wrong? This isn't a recommendation to council.
Had a recommendation passed a second ago. Have you noticed? Yes. And what was the second one you think you've seen?
Retrospective approval for
the
them.
email.
So that's been.
Has that gone through full council?
Yes. EF138/24.
So we'll check that, but yeah. 138/24.
Sorry, which one?
Recommend retrospective approval for.
I mean, it's a formality, but we do.
Which one is it? 138/24. Via email.
135/24.
135/24. Which one of those? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. Number 4. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. It does say recommend to full council.
Okay. So
right.
I think what we'll do here is, if the room is happy, then we will go through that recommendation. Clearly, it should have been on the full council minutes. The clerk will need to investigate that further. But for the moment, is it 1 to 6?
No, I think she's just saying, Councillor Kenny was just saying point 4 there, resolved unanimously to agree the retrospective approval to recommend to full council the release of £2,501 from the SIL EMR towards the play park repairs at South Fistral. So that, I'm happy to propose that.
So, sorry, let's just pause a second, Kate, before we jump forward. I'm actually looking at 138/24 further down on page 9, which is a recommended for retrospective approval for quotation for repairs to the external manhole cover, 4,184 from Marcus Hill. There's a whole pile of them. Yeah.
We can do this by email because they're only formalities.
Yeah, I think
That will pass
the safest is to just look at this outside of full council. Yeah. We will investigate what's happened here just to double check, because I'm looking at some of these do have budget lines attached to them, so they're not EMR releases, and so they can make that decision. The one about South Fistral play area, because it's coming out of SIL, it would go to governance and resources first, and I believe it's on that agenda.
Okay, that's fine. That makes sense. Okay, so we'll take that away and we'll come back. So, Councillor Kenny for planning and licensing minutes.
It's a great pleasure to propose for noting the minutes for P&L for the 15th of January and the 22nd of January. As always, I will thank my team for working so hard and point out to them they're not getting a holiday on the 2nd of April, because we are in fact having a P&L meeting. We should have had 3 in April, but we are wimping out on the one that is the night before the election. So there's a seconder for that, Councillor Thompson.
Okay, everyone in favour? Any objections? Abstentions? No, we're good. Perfect. Thank you very much. Item 12, Newquay Council issues. One item on the agenda, 12A, Code of Conduct Complaint Decision Notice. I trust everyone has had a chance to furnish themselves with the information in relation to this particular item. Andy, do you want to say anything?
Yes, just in accordance with standing orders, the obligation on the council is to note this, so it goes into the public realm. It is published by Cornwall Council on their website anyway, but there is no other further action. The recommendation speaks for itself with that member.
Thank you, Andy. As much as I'd love to propose this, it probably feels right that someone else should. So can I have a proposer for this item, please? Councillor Brooke.
Just to note it.
Yeah, just for noting, yeah. A seconder, Councillor North. All in favour? And thank you very much. Chairman's other business. I don't think I have any other business other than to say, of course, this is our last full council meeting. There are some meetings of ENF, C&T, 2 meetings of GNR, some planning licensing meetings and a HR meeting, I think, between now and the election on the 1st. We obviously move into the wonderful world of PERDA. They don't call it that anymore, do they? The pre-election period. As of next Friday, the 14th of March, I believe, which is a couple of weeks earlier than it needed to be. Wonder why they did that.
Easter in the middle of it.
Yeah, no, I'm very much aware of that. I was just having some fun with it, Councillor Kenny. And so there is work to be done, but in the meantime, I would encourage those of you that are looking to restand to come and see the clerk at the end of the meeting, as he has copies of the paperwork you'll need to sign up to be a councillor in the next term. He has them printed and ready for you with a full explanation. Otherwise, you're going to have to drive to County Hall to pick one up. So, yeah, and I suppose that just leaves me to ask, anyone else have any other business before we finish on this, the last full council meeting? No. Well, I just want to thank you all for your robust debate over the last year and the fun that we've had in this chamber and out, and you know, hopefully look forward to seeing many of you back in the next term at the next full council meeting in May. Thank you. And that's the end.